Okay. Okay, because this conference call will be recorded and shared with the class. So I record them and then I post them as part of an announcement so that everyone in the class can benefit. Is that acceptable for everyone?
Yes,
Hello?
that works for me.
Okay. Okay. And I will be doing conference calls every week. They will usually be on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I was not available this Wednesday night, so when enough people said that they would like some help, I decided to do it on Friday night instead. But starting next week, there'll be a Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will put an announcement out about that. And the other thing I wanted to mention quickly is student collaboration. I do not have a problem with students collaborating with each other in the class. Now, that is basically on resources. When it comes down to actually doing the Codio challenges or writing the scripts for your milestones, that has to be your own work. But if you have questions or if you have found a resource that is particularly helpful, you are more than welcome to post that in the general discussion forum and share it with any students who are out there. So sorry about that. Because I'm not allowed to share things that are not pre-approved by the school because I'm the instructor. But as students, you can share things that you find. So if you find something that's helpful and you want to share it with your classmates, or you want to figure out a way to collaborate with your classmates in learning some of the new constructs and language techniques that are involved, you can do that, and you can do it through the general discussion forum. So that was just one thing I wanted to state before we got started. So who just joined the meeting?
This is Shane.
Hi, Shane.
Hi, how are you?
Fine. How are you?
Good. Thank you for hosting this this conference call.
That's okay. Usually they'll be on Wednesday nights. That's when I usually do them.
I won't miss them.
Okay, just to let you know, this conference call, like all the conference calls, is going to be recorded or is being recorded, and it will be posted. There will be an announcement with the recording of the conference call so that anybody can go back, they can listen to it, they can use it, and you guys can use it too, and it'll be up and available for the entire course. So if you happen to miss a conference call, the recording will be there, assuming somebody joins the conference call. So I think I've got through all that now. So what you should see in front of you, and can everybody see my desktop?
I can.
Okay.
I can too.
Okay. So what you see here on the desktop is just Codio. And Codio is the main programming environment that we are going to use. Now, this is in lieu of you guys having to install your own Python compiler on your own computer. Python gives us certain things. It gives us a standardized compiler. It gives each student a playground where they can write scripts if they want to. And it gives modules with pre-canned challenges that you can go through and do. And just to also let you know that when you do a challenge, even if you get frustrated, do something with that challenge. I've checked this out with the administration. I give partial credit for the Codio challenges. So even if it's not 100% correct, or you can't get that last new line where you need it to be, or the math isn't exactly right, still do it. Because I will go through every single thing that is marked wrong in Codio. I go through and I determine what partial credit can be applied. So just because you're frustrated with something, or you didn't get, challenge 2 of 4, exactly right, so you get frustrated and you don't want to do challenge 3 and challenge 4, do them anyway, because there are partial credits, and all those credits add up to part of your final grade. So make sure you try everything. And if you're trying something and you're having a problem with it, the best thing to do is to take a screen capture of the Codio challenge and email it to me, because that's the best way I can help you. So remember that for when things get frustrating, because things are going to get frustrating. If they haven't already, they're going to get frustrating. It always happens whenever anyone learns a new programming language, including me. And I've been programming for a very long time, and I write a lot of different programming. I write in a lot of different programming languages. So what this class is about, it's about introduction to coding using the Python scripting language. And Python is a great little language. It is very powerful, but also it's powerful like a compiled language, but it is versatile and flexible like a scripting language, like a bash or something like that. So it's very, very useful. And what we start off with is, in this section, is inputs and outputs. Now this section is about basics. It's about numbers and it's about strings. But there's one thing that it's about that they don't really call out in Codio, and that's it's also about variables. Well, what is a variable? And if you need to, there should be an MP4 up in an announcement that I put up 2 days ago that talks just about what a variable is. But a variable is a named space in memory. That's all it is. And that name will be associated with a value. So if I look here on the left-hand side of my screen, okay, on line 3, I see the word digit 1, okay? And digit 1 is going to be equal to something. Well, there's a key. That's how I know that this is a variable. This is a variable because it's on the left-hand side of the equal sign. And this says that the word digit 1 is going to be assigned some value. Now that value could be a string, that value could be an integer, that value could be a float, but it's going to be assigned some value, and every time I use digit 1, I'm going to get the value automatically. Now in this case, we're going to set it equal to some form of an integer. That's what this little int in front of this sys.argv of 1 does. It says, whatever this is, make it an int. Now, what in the world is sys.argv of 1? Well, what that is that is an input. No programming language runs in a vacuum, okay? Or very few run in a vacuum. And what all programs rely on is the information we're bringing into them, what that program is then going to do to that information, and the information that gets output from the program. So the first step of that is bringing data or information into the program. Well, how do I do that? Well, how do you do that? There's a couple different ways, okay? For Codio, this is how we're doing it, okay? What this says is from the sys module, and we get it from this import sys. Import sys is going to be in every single Codio and Python thing that you write. All right, so import sys says, give me this thing called sys. And basically what sys is it says, give me something from the system. And sys.argv says, I'm expecting an argument that's coming in from the system. And 1 just says, it's the first argument. And 2 just says, it's the second argument. And 3 just says, it's the third argument. So on line 3, if I put this all together, what it says is, I'm going to type this here, assign the value, input value from the command line to the variable digit 1. So that's what this is telling me, okay? That's how you would read this in English. So it's going to assign the input from the command line, from the first argument on the command line into the variable digit 1. So whatever that first argument is, the variable digit 1 will now hold it. And for digit 2, the same thing. It's going to hold the second argument on the command line. And for digit 3, it's going to hold the third argument on the command line. It's going to do that because of this right here, sys.argv, open square bracket, 3, close square bracket. And I've got this int thing now. What is that? Well, Python assumes everything is a string. Unless you tell it otherwise, somehow everything, especially anything that comes in from outside the script, is a string. So if it's an integer, you have to tell Python that it is an integer. An integer being, 0 through whatever the maximum integer size is for your computer. So that's what this int here does. All of these ints just say this is going to be an integer. Okay? And it's here, so that's the first 6 lines. Starting at line 9, we're going to print something out. So we've brought something in. This is input. And now we're going to put something out. So this thing that we're putting out is just a reflection of what we brought in. And then here we're going to do some math. Okay, that's all we're going to do. Num is a variable. We know num is a variable because it is on the left-hand side of the equal sign. Okay, if you are unsure if something is a variable, look on the left-hand side of the equal sign. If it was ever on the left-hand side of the equal sign, it is a variable. So we know num is a variable because it is on the left-hand side of the equal sign. So I have a variable named num, and I'm going to set it equal to the equation, what the equation equals to of digit 1 times digit 2 plus digit 3. And then here on lines 18, 19, and 20, I'm going to print the results. I'm going to output a string called results. I'm going to output the value of num. And I'm going to say this is the second output expression with stir num. Okay? So if I run the code, here's what I get. input 1 is 3. So digit 1, I'm going to change this to digit 1 and digit 2 because I think that's clearer. And digit 3. Let's run the code to the left again. Digit 1 has a value of 3. Digit 2 has a value of 4. And digit 3 has a value of 5. I got those from right up here. Okay? And then I wanted to do something with those integers, 3, 4, and 5. So what I did was I said the variable num is equal to digit 1 times digit 2 plus digit 3. And then I printed out the results. The results are, first I have the word results, and then I just put num. Well, that's interesting because when on the second line, because we can say this is the output associated with this. Okay, sorry. Let me do that again. Let me resize. This right here is line 18, 19, and 20. So we have the word results. This is line 18. Line 19 is just 27. Well, let's take a look at what line 19 is. Line 19 says print num. That's all it says. Now, what's happening here is that when we say print and we put a variable into the print statement, it's going to give us the value that is associated with that variable. So here we gave num a value. We gave it the value 27 because it was 3 times 4 plus 5. And so that's what we got here. We got the value of 27, not the name num. And that's an important distinction because you're going to be using variables all the time. You cannot do anything in a program without variables. So you have to understand the distinction between num as a variable and num as a string. Okay? Num right here is inside the quotes. All right? If something is inside quotes, it's a string. It will always be a string. There is no way it will not be a string. Okay? So, because the word num here is inside these quotes, it's just going to be treated like the string num. It has no special powers in Python. While as on line 19, there are no quotes around num, which means to Python, this is a variable called num, and I want the value associated with that variable. I want the value that was created in line 15. So, is that distinction clear to everyone on the phone? Because it has to be clear before we move forward. Does everybody understand that distinction?
Yes.
Yes. I do have
good?
one question. I do have one question. On line 19, I know reading through the Python chapters that a lot of this code kind of lives and dies by spaces and this and that. So on line 19, I see space, num space inside the parentheses. Is there a specific reason why it's that way, or does it matter?
For this, it doesn't matter. It could be just as easily do that. Somebody did that. There's flavor versus function in programming language. Function is, how does this actually work? Flavor is, how do I want it to look when I'm reading through the program? This is flavor. It doesn't change the functionality at all. When you talk about things being, spaces being important in Codio, it's often important because Codio does a string comparison based on the output to determine if you're right. And that's where some things can get very frustrating with Codio, because you'll think you have it right and Codio tells you you have it wrong. And it may simply be because there's one space off, which is why I always tell my students, do the best you can, and if you think it's right and Codio thinks it's wrong, it's okay, because there are times in here where Codio is actually wrong. And I know where those times are. So, and that's why I give partial credit. I will go back through, and if you're simply a space or two off, you'll get full credit for the challenge, even though Codio has given you no points for the challenge. So don't let Codio's persnickety nature when it comes to things like spaces and new lines drive you crazy. Okay? Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. So that's how you get information into Codio. Now what can you do with it? Well, what we're going to start with is we're going to start with dealing with strings and numbers. Okay? String is just that. It's just a string. It is a series of characters. One follows the other. And it always starts out as something in quotes or something that's brought in from outside the program. So if we look here on the left-hand side, we see a variable, a number, and it's set equal to 8. We know a number is a variable because it is on the left-hand side of the single equal sign. And we're setting the value of a number to 8. Okay? Here, we have a string. A string is a variable. We know it's a variable because it's on the left-hand side of a single equal sign, and we're setting it to stir a number. Now, this stir is important because I want Codio to treat the number 8 like a string. So I could have done a couple of things. And one thing they're doing here in Codio is they're converting it from the integer that it is up here. We know it's an integer because it doesn't have quotes around it. And they're going to convert it to a string down here. And this stir will do that. Okay? Now, why in the world would they do that? Why wouldn't they just say on line 7, a string combined with a number plus a string? Okay. Well, the reason is that in Codio, you can't just add a number to a string because Codio will see Python will see the number 8 and see the plus sign and try and do arithmetic. Well, you can't do arithmetic with a string combined with the number. It won't work. There's no way to do arithmetic with that. So you always have to convert an integer or a float to a string if you want to add it or concatenate it to another string. And we know this is always going to be a string because result is a variable because it's on the left-hand side of a single equal sign. And the first thing I have done is opened a quote, typed in some characters, and closed a quote. So Python is going to say result is a string. And then it's going to look and say, okay, I have a plus sign. And then it's going to say, oh, I have another string. That's okay. But if this were not another string, it would not be okay. So let's run the code for a second. I'm going to do something to mess it up. First of all, I'm going to put just 8 there. So let's see what happens when I run the code. See what happens to line 7. Well, I have this wonderful little X, and I have this nasty looking stuff here. And this nasty looking stuff is called an exception. And Python has thrown an exception. What it has done is it's thrown its programming hands up, and it has said, I don't know what you want me to do with this because it doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm going to give you an error, and I'm going to tell you what I think the error is, and you're going to have to fix it. So that's what this is. So it says, I can't convert an int to a str implicitly. And that's true. You can't. What it's trying to do is it's trying to say, oh, I have a string, and you've got the plus sign, which means I'm only ever going to be able to add a string to another string. I'm going to concatenate it. Well, but you didn't give me a string. You gave me an integer. So that's why it's important to do this. Now, I could have also done this, and this would have been right as well. And you'll see that that got rid of that nasty little exception. So everybody get that there's a difference between numbers, the way numbers are handled in Python, and there's a difference between the way strings are handled in Python. And the way to make a number act like a string is to use the stir function. Stir takes one argument, and that's the number. Whoops. Errors. So I just showed you a little bit about errors. And we're going to talk a little bit more about errors because in programming, you're going to run into errors. Nobody's perfect. Everybody types things in wrong. Everybody gets the constructs wrong. This is an error. That's all it is. All right. When you see the words traceback, you'll have an error. So what in the world is the error here? Well, that's what we need to figure out. Okay. This file content 1 intro error.py. That's just the name of the file. So what you see here is error.py. So that's what it's telling you, okay? Every one of these left-hand panes that has code in it that you can run in Codio actually is a Python file somewhere in the Codio system. So don't let this trip you up, okay? Really what we're looking for is what's after that, okay? It tells us that on line 8, in num equal digit 1 plus digit 4. So I know I'm looking at line 8 right now. Okay. Name error. Name digit 4 is not defined. Well, let's take a look. Is name digit 4 defined? Well, we have a variable digit 1. We have a variable digit 2. A variable digit 3. But at no time before line 8 do I see digit 4 on the left-hand side of a single equal sign. So there's a problem. So what do you want to do? Well, we could do this. We could change this to digit 3 if that was the right thing to do. Okay? But really what we're here looking at is just this is the error. Don't be surprised when you get them. Don't be shocked when you get them. Look for the valuable information in the error, where it is and what's happening. Those two pieces of information will lead you back to what it is you have to fix. Okay, so in every Codio module, you're going to have this experiments area. So this is just to experiment if you want or need to. Okay, so what we have here is something new. All right, we're talking about numeric expressions, and this is a float. This thing on the left-hand side is a float, and there is a video up in an announcement about the floats. Well, what's a float? A float is just a chart, okay? It is a flow chart. And what it does is it allows you to walk through and demonstrate the principles that we're about to talk about. In this case, we're talking about numeric expressions, and the expression is A times B plus C. So what do we want to do? Well, let's just figure out how the float works for a second. So this is end beginning, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to step through the float. Okay, now you'll notice when I hit this step button that I get two new panes down here. One is console and one is variables. And you will see that variable input 0 is defined as 3, variable input 1 is defined as 4, and variable input 2 is defined as 5. And we know this because we see them here. Now, again, this is equivalent to that sys.argv, okay? So here I get to this expression. An expression is just something that happens to the right-hand side of an equal sign. A variable always happens to the left-hand side of an equal sign, single equal sign. An expression will happen to the right-hand side of a single equal sign. So the expression is input 0 times input 1 plus input 2. So that's what I'm doing. So this is a specific flowed check that's just going to print it. Oops, sorry, I do this all the time, and I apologize, and I don't mean to make anybody seasick. This is just a little check. It's a little debug statement. That's what the little wrench is for. It says num is 27, and then the final output is num, and you'll see the little printer thing right here in flowed. That means that you're printing it out to the screen. And the program is finished. Now, the nice thing about a float, other than the fact that I try and make my students sick by doing this, is I can change these inputs. So let's say I want to make input 1 10. So I'm going to rerun my float. You'll see down here that input 2 is now 10. I can run through it, and my new output is 45. Now, the nice thing about this is it seems pretty simplistic right now, but when you go to do the conditional statements, the if statements, when you start looping, these floats become very handy to learn what's happening and how it happens. So that was the float, and here's the code associated with that float. Okay, we have input 0, which is going to take some argument from the command line, and it's going to be turned into an integer. Input 1, some argument from the command line, and input 2, an argument from the command line. Then I'm going to do some arithmetic. I've got my variable num. I know it's a variable because it's on the left-hand side of a single equal sign. And then I have my expression, my arithmetic expression. And by the way, I'm going to say on the left-hand side of the single equal sign enough time to make your eyes roll back in your head. But I'm doing that on purpose because we all have to have a common language when we are learning a programming language. And so my repetition is important because I want you to understand the language that I'm talking about. When I say a variable, you automatically know that's on the left-hand side of the single equal sign. So throughout this entire recording, I'm going to be saying that a lot. And then when we get to conditionals, I'm going to be saying other things a lot. So there's a method to my madness, and repetition helps the mind remember. So on the left-hand side of the single equal sign, I have the word num, and num is a variable, and it stores the value associated with the results of this arithmetic expression. So if I run the code, I get num is 27, and then I print out 27. So let's do one of the challenges, okay? So this, sorry about that. Can everybody hear me still? I don't know why it does that sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we read Codio, it gives us some clues. All right? It says your code should expect one input. That means that there's going to be one sys.argv statement. All you need to do is add 12 to it and output the results. So if I look up here, I have the ubiquitous import sys, which will be in every Codio Python file. And here I have n is equal to int sysargv1. So here's the promised input from the command line. Your code should expect one input. Well, that one input is right here. Okay. N is a variable. We know n is a variable because it is on the left-hand side of the single equal sign. And what they're asking me to do is they're asking me to add 12 to it. Now, in this case, it is the variable capital N, and output the results. So I'm going to say results, if I can type, equal N plus 12, and I'm going to print result. That's all they want me to do here. And that's correct. Okay? So that everybody understand how I got to where I got in this challenge.
Yeah,
Is that
I
a
understand.
resounding yes? Okay.
Yeah, I understand. So I have a question. So in something like this, right? This is kind of the graded portion of the of the Codio module. So, for instance, like what I did was I just did print parentheses n plus 12. Do I need to write out like how you did result is equal to n plus 12 and then print it as a result in code, or can I just go directly to it?
A flavor versus function.
Okay.
That was all flavor. That is exactly the same. So you're fine. Okay?
Yeah.
So you could have just as easily done it like that. Okay. So I'm going to do one more of these, and then we're going to go to some of the string challenges. And let me ask a question. Are there any specific Codio challenges that anybody on the phone wants to go through?
I'm actually stuck on strings containing numbers.
Okay. So we'll do that one next. I'll do this one. It won't take much time. And then we'll go on to the string stuff, and we'll do the string containing numbers. Okay?
Yep.
So here, the Codio challenge writes, we pass in 3 inputs, A, B, and C. You should output A times B plus C divided by 3. So here we have the ubiquitous import sys. We have 3 variables, A, B, and C. We know they're variables because they're on the left-hand side of the single equal sign. In this case, we're going to have sysargv1, 2, and 3, but we're not using int. We're using float. So the difference between an int and a float in Python is that a float has some value after the decimal point. An int will never have a decimal point. An int will only ever be a 1 or a 2 or a 3. Whereas a float could be a 1.5. or a 2.7 or a 3.9. So that is the difference between an int and a float. So if you know you're working with something like money, where you're going to have change, you always want it to be a float. So here, what I need to do is I need to do the output of this arithmetic expression. So I'm going to say results, and result is just a variable name. It could be anything. Equals variable A times, open parenthesis, and you'll notice that Codio closes the parenthesis, which is very nice. B plus C divided by 3. Oops, C divided by 3. Now, you'll just see that I changed that C from a lowercase c to an uppercase C. Let me change it back to a lowercase c. See what happens when I say check it. Well, I have my friendly trace back here, which is saying, oh, wait a minute, something's wrong. What's wrong? Well, on line 8, there's a name error. C is not defined. Well, but C is defined right here. But it's saying C is not defined. What you will see is that Python is both case and space sensitive. So lowercase c in Python is different than uppercase C in Python. So this has to be an uppercase C because capital C is not the same as lowercase c. So, okay, I did that. It says, wait a minute, the expected output was 22, but there's no output. That's because I didn't print anything out to the console. So I needed to use the print function, and I'm going to print result. And there we have it. Okay? And you'll notice the input changed between the last one and this one. That's why you always have to make sure you use Codio's values, Codio's inputs, because they change them on you when you run it sometimes. And that can become very maddening if you try and set the values yourself. So I'm going to leave the remainder of, well, those are the only two. So strings. Strings are just that. They're just anything in quotes. If you have a quote around it, it's a string. And the nice thing about strings is you can add them together. You can't subtract them. But you can add two strings together and come up with what they call a concatenation. So this is just the code equivalent to the previous Codio. And it just shows you that you can have hello, variable A string is equal to hello, new string is equal to A string plus world. Well, since A string's value is hello, it's going to be hello world. Now here, it's interesting. Newster is equal to open quote 1, 2, 3 close quote. That means that 1, 2, 3 is a string. That's all it is. It's 1, 2, 3. It is not 123. It is simply the characters 1 followed by 2 followed by 3. And then I'm going to concatenate to that a string version of the number 10. So that is equivalent to putting 10 in quotes. Like that. And then here I have new string, and it's going to be the characters 1, 2, 3, concatenated with the characters 4, 5, and 6. And so that's what you'll see over here. Okay, so joining strings is pretty easy. It's just the plus sign. So this says we have a program. We are providing a string as input to your program. When we're reading Codio, this means that there's going to be a sys.argv argument. So we see that here. We see name is a variable. We know it's a variable because it's on the left-hand side of a single equal sign. So Codio is giving us the value that is going to be stored in name. What do we have to do? We have to add the string. You'll see comma, space, hello, exclamation point to the string we provide, then output it. So I can say result is equal to name plus open space, comma, and then I can print result. I'm going to check it, and it's very happy. Codio gave us the input Mike, and I output Mike, hello, exclamation point. Okay, so I'm going to let you guys join some more strings on this one, and we'll get to the string containing numbers. Okay? This says it could be a bit tricky because you need to experiment to see what works. But while we are passing in two numbers as inputs. You should join them together into a string, into a single string. If you add these numbers together, they will be added together. So let's just do this. Let us say result equals number 1 plus number 2. And we're going to print result. Now this is going to be wrong. Okay? And it's wrong because it was expecting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but got under the number 579. Well, it got the number 579 because we were treating number 1 and number 2 as integers, not as strings. So to treat those as strings, we're just going to convert them to str. This says, even though number 1, the variable number 1, is an int, we want to treat it like a string. Even though the value in variable 2 is an int, we want to treat it like a string. So let's see what happens. And when we do that, we get the right output. So you have to understand the type of the string. Okay, so this says fixing errors. So we already kind of talked about this. So this is just about restoring the current files in case things got really messed up. Okay, so which challenge was it? The string containing numbers one? Was that the one you were having trouble with?
Yeah, that was the one you just, yeah, okay. That was the one you just did.
Do you understand that now?
Yep, I do.
Okay. So let's just go over a couple of the last two fixing the challenge, or at least one of them. And then I'll answer anybody's questions. Okay? So this says, fix the broken code. It should output hello, Mike. Okay? So we're going to be inputting something. Codio is going to give us a value. And we're going to say, new str is hello, comma, and name. Now, my guess is this is going to have an error. Any guess as to why it is going to have an error? Why line 7 it has an error? Line 7 has an error because all we have is this space name here. We have this string, and then a space, and then the variable name. Well, that doesn't make any sense to Python. Python's going to say, hold on, wait a minute, there's a problem in line 7. There's a syntax error here. Well, what's the syntax error? Well, if we go back and we look at the other places where we concatenated the strings, we will realize that there was a plus sign in between the first string and the second string. So if we do this, you go, whoops, my bad, didn't run the code. If we do this, well, let's see. New string is not defined. So we just got another error here. Now this is on line 8, so let's see what valuable information it's giving us. And it says name error. So there's a problem with the variable name. New string is not defined. And you're going to say, well, wait a minute, what about this? New string is defined here. Well, if we look at new string here on line 7 and new string on line 8, we will see that new string on line 7 has a capital S and new string on line 8 has a lowercase s. So if I change that to an uppercase and I check it, everything's fine. So that's when you're doing a fixed challenge in Codio, that's what you have to do. You have to fix the syntax error. So, does anybody have any questions? Does anybody need us to go over any of the other challenges? Is everybody good?
Well, I do have one question and just a general question. So
that's fine.
when we're submitting our work, will we be creating a file at the end of the Codio, I guess, module, so to speak, and then uploading that file to our Brightspace?
Not for challenges. For milestones, you will.
Okay.
But for challenges, you won't. Okay? Challenges, the things that we just went through, the Codio challenges, I will go through and I will transfer the grades from Codio to Brightspace because you would have to download a bunch of different files. And what's important to me is that I see your work in context, and I can't see your work in context because I don't know what this is. I don't know what sys.argv1 is. I don't know what Codio passes you in. So when I go through the Codio challenges, I'm going to go back through, I'm going to look at what Codio says is the summary. And then if there are any errors, any Codio challenges that were not completed successfully, I will go back and read through those challenges, look at them, and figure out if, in fact, you deserve partial credit. So you don't need to download anything and upload it for the challenges. For the milestones, it's different. And actually, I'll have a video that I'll be putting up next week on how to download your file for the challenges, or sorry, for the milestones.
So does that mean that there's actually no submission for Module 1-2?
There is no submission for Module 1-2.
Okay.
Because I will be bringing over the grade from Codio.
Understood. Thank you.
What I will need you to do, though, is when you're done, you mark the challenges completed.
And that's in the dashboard, correct?
That's in the dashboard. You mark it as completed. Because if you don't mark it as completed, it's not going to show up in my sheet as completed, and it won't. The grades won't transfer properly. It becomes a real pain for me. So you need to mark them as completed. You don't ever have to mark your playground as completed, but I would like you to mark your challenges as completed. So, and you don't have to mark the milestone ones completed either, because you're going to go back after I review them. You're going to give me a draft of the milestones. I will review the milestones, and then once I've reviewed the draft, I will make suggestions and recommendations to get a better grade with the final. And so then you're going to go back and modify that again in your playground and then download the file again. So you don't want to mark the milestones as completed, but I do want you to mark all the challenges as completed. Is that clear?
And then, yeah, yes it is. And then, so my last question is the bulk of everything, I mean, pretty much everything we're doing for this term will all be done inside of Codio. Is that correct? We're doing all the work in Codio?
Yes.
Okay.
All of the work you do is inside Codio. There is no third-party IDE for Python that we're using for this class.
So I read one of the announcements that somebody was trying to download some Python software to their computer, and I wasn't sure we had to download that or not.
No, you don't have to. You can if you want. If you want to explore using a third-party IDE for your milestones, you can do that. You're still going to have to make sure that each individual challenge of the milestone is completed, but you can download and play with any number of Python IDEs. There's no prohibition for doing that, but you have to make sure that when you're going through the milestone in Codio that you at minimum upload your code. So most people don't want to go through that process, so they just do it in Codio. Does anybody have any other questions? Is everyone good to finish the challenges that are left? Is that a resounding yes?
Okay. Sorry, my kids are talking, but mine are done, so that's why I'm not responding.
Okay, that's fine. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to end the conference call, and I will download the recording of this conference call, and I will put it up as an announcement in Brightspace so that anybody who wants to can take a look at it. If anybody has any questions, the best way to get in touch with me always is to email me. So you guys have a great weekend, and email me if you have any questions, okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Good night.